everyone. Let's talk about what's possible with sacred sexuality on our day 2 of the live stream. And yesterday we got into why I decided it's time for me to share about sacred sexuality, like why it's so important right now on the planet. And I opened yesterday's live with the fact that just because you don't believe something to be true, it doesn't mean that it's not. Or if you can't do it yourself, it doesn't mean that it's not true. And the reason I opened it with that is I didn't get to it in yesterday's live stream, but my number one watched video on YouTube is where I talk about how men can learn to separate their orgasm and their ejaculation and why you want to do it, because it increases energy, power. So if a man wants to grow his business or create a business, it's so important to be mindful of how often one is ejaculating. And same for professional athletes. It is not a good idea if you are wanting to create something, do something, and really need to use your energy. It's really important for men to think about how often they're ejaculating, because what's normal in society, because remember when I opened yesterday's live, I said just because something is normalized, it doesn't mean it's okay. And so it's normalized in society that people watch porn. It's normalized that men should just ejaculate all the time. And it's actually not what's good though. Especially if you want to live an energizing, full, present, heart-centered life. For men, it actually does such a disservice to your health and to your life and to your business and to how much money you make when you're ejaculating a lot. And I had a comment this past week where someone wrote on that video, this is a hoax, it's not true, it's not possible for men to do this. And I just laugh because it's funny how when people are ignorant, they think something is impossible. And it's totally possible. I've seen it with my own eyes. It's totally possible. I share it with my male clients and they do it with success. They report back. It's totally possible. I share it with my couples clients and the wives report back. And so do the husbands, and they share about how it's changing their lives for the better in so many ways. And it's also great for men not to ejaculate all the time and to learn to separate orgasm from ejaculation, because it makes the love life better. It makes the intimacy time better, because women usually need a longer time. And for women to realize cervical orgasms, long periods of penetration are required. So I'm not going to go into the how-to on my lives. That's reserved for the upcoming course. My Sacred Sexuality course is starting April 1st. So if all of this stuff that I've been talking about in my lives, that I have been posting about, that I shared yesterday in terms of allowing your sexual energy to support your energy levels, your health, so that you can also create more in your business, earn more money. Our sexual energy is so potent for so much. And today I wanted to talk more about what's possible with learning about sacred sexuality and kind of the difference between what can happen when we actually practice sacred sexuality versus just regular normalized sexuality, which can actually be detrimental to our health, to our mentality, to our relationships, to our time in the bedroom, to how much money's in our bank account, to how much energy levels we have. And I'm not going to teach as much because that's what I'm reserving for the course, but I want to share more about the theory, and so that you understand, because most people are completely unaware about the fact that something like sacred sexuality exists, and also the fact that it could be affecting your love life, your business, your health, your energy levels. So when I saw this man comment this is a hoax, you're tricking people, it's not possible for a man to separate his orgasm from his ejaculation, I just laughed, because it's crazy how so many people don't know this is possible. And the same is true for women. I remember being at one year I hosted a New Year's retreat in Oaxaca, Mexico, and people from all over the world went, and there was maybe like 200 people there. I was co-facilitating. And at one of the dinners, there was a conversation about cervical orgasms. And some women were saying that's not possible, that's too painful, and it's not true. It is possible. It's not too painful. It's only painful for a woman and her cervix when she has armor, when she has had trauma that has not been processed. And that's usually what happens when sex was not sacred. And the work that we do inside of the Sacred Sexuality course is to de-armor and to allow the woman to receive even more pleasure so that she can become multi-orgasmic, because that's also possible. You know, one of the craziest things that I've seen on social media is when I hear people saying like certain things are not possible. Like I hear people saying the fact that like a G-spot doesn't exist. It does exist. I know from personal experience, I know from the experience of other women, and a lot of people don't even understand the full anatomy and the full possibilities of what's possible in pleasure. There's actually multiple places beyond a clitoris and beyond a cervix and beyond a G-spot too that a woman can have an orgasm. And a lot of the problem in terms of mental health, for example, is I really feel that people are not having enough healthy sex, enough sacred sex, because it's very different. It can be life-giving. It could be energizing and inspiring when we have sacred sexuality. And it does require a whole education because most people are unaware, completely unaware of what's possible, because so much, like I shared yesterday in yesterday's live, so much of people's sexual education came from pornography. And this has completely disconnected sex. Oftentimes, like people are not doing this from a space of love and connection. It's for money. Sometimes people are forced into it. And so a lot of reprogramming is needed in our society regarding sexuality and regarding what's possible around pleasure and orgasms, both for men and for women too. Because a lot of men are also like unaware of what to do. And so as I was mentioning yesterday, in yesterday's live, I just want to elaborate a bit more how it's even been shown that some men are just resorting to like AI or ChatGPT or pornography as a way for a sexual outlet because they feel like it's too hard. And that's so sad. It's so sad that people are just like, they're just giving up. They're just giving up on their sex lives because they're either worried they're not going to do it well, or it's just easier to engage in some like artificial thing instead of a real relationship. And that's so, so sad. And so I feel like as someone who's here as a bringer of the new paradigm, part of that is also around reteaching, relearning, unprogramming what doesn't serve around sexuality and then bringing in what does. And this is something I've been studying since the beginning of my spiritual awakening, and something that I have done in many lives before. And even through my spiritual path, I've also been a part of an esoteric couples path, which is connected more into mystery schools. And it's fascinating what can be done with sacred sexuality, including a big part of it is when you learn how to move the energy. And most of our sexual energy lives down in our pelvis, where our sexual organs are. And with sacred sexuality and with Tantra, we really learn how to move that energy to other places. And that includes our upper energy centers so that we can grow psychic abilities, our intuition, our power to create and visualize and manifest. And we can even use sacred sexuality for manifestation as well. And I think it's so important to talk about these things because it's very fascinating that we grow up in a culture where it's not normalized to talk about something that has such a big impact and is such a big part of who we are. Because this is how we repopulate the planet. This is how we are fueled in terms of energy. And by not talking about it, by people thinking it's inappropriate to talk about it, we are diminishing our power. And so a big reprogramming that happens with sacred sexuality is that we reclaim our power. And that's a big part of spiritual awakening. And so when people are disconnected from their sexuality, it's like you're disconnected from a big part of your capacity to create in the world and take action in the world. And by integrating this piece and even getting into healing, because a lot of people, an interesting question, I was thinking of saving this for tomorrow's live, but it's coming up to talk about it now. But an interesting thing is that when I have asked people, when was their first experience connected to sexuality, usually it's not a very conscious one. It's not a very sacred one. And there's some form of distortion or maybe even like when it was taught in school, it wasn't really taught in a way. And it was also taught a little bit too late. A lot of times people's first experience around sexuality is super young, and it's from someone who is not conscious. And for some people, it was in really challenging situations or situations that were not sacred. And so if that's not processed and healed, that creates blocks connected to sexuality, blocks connected to pleasure, blocks connected to intimacy in general, and even connection to oneself. And so that's why it's so important to do this work, whether you're single or in a relationship, if you want to realize your ultimate potential, regardless of if you're in a relationship or not, but if you want to be in the most amazing relationship, it's so important to do sacred sexuality work as well, because the more that we connect to that part of ourselves and we know that part of ourselves, the better we can connect to another and be in a beautiful relationship that allows for that exchange of energy, which only helps us to grow our power. And the church and even society in general really caused us, and even religions, cause us to really shame that part of ourselves. And so anytime we feel shame around anything, whether it's our sexuality or anything, that siphons and steals our energy. And it hinders our capacity to grow in that area. And it's something we start to avoid. So even reflect personally, do you find that you avoid sexuality in certain ways, in certain moments, because you feel, whether there was something that happened in your childhood or whether you're not sure if you're doing it right or if it's good or anything like that. And so it's so important that whatever we want to avoid or feel shame around, that we go deeper into. And a lot of what I teach inside of the Sacred Sexuality course is the de-armoring, is the healing around it, is the normalizing of what's good and healthy, and also bringing awareness to what is not. And this is so important for our well-being and our health, because a lot of people, and even women, for example, have a lot of reproductive issues, like things like fibroids or endometriosis or painful periods or not pleasurable sex. All comes from unprocessed, unhealed energies, emotions, and situations that perpetuate. They don't just go away. Like if you avoid something, it doesn't just go away. Oftentimes it can fester and it can get worse. And so it's not for scare tactic, because anyone can come into the Sacred Sexuality course. If you already have an amazing relationship and you just want to make it even better, then the course is for you. But also if you have some unprocessed things around sexuality, or as a woman, you're not as connected to your pleasure, or as a man, you tend to avoid it, or you even have some erectile dysfunction. This is something we're seeing a lot in our society, a lot of erectile dysfunction. And what causes that is pornography and ways of connecting to sexuality that's not healthy. And anytime something is shamed or suppressed, people still find outlets for it, and it actually creates more of a shadow. So a shadow can be something that's more deviant and aggressive, but it also can be something that then creates a side effect. Like for a woman, it could be like anorgasmia, like not being able to orgasm. And for a man, it could be erectile dysfunction, for example. So I always feel like, even as a joke, I would say as a doctor, I always felt like the answer, like if someone's like, this is happening in my life and I'm unhappy, I feel like the answer is always more sex. But it's not just more sex, unconscious sex, and just kind of going around and sleeping with whoever and having casual sex. This is harmful, actually, and a lot of times we have to heal from that. I mean connected and more tantric and spiritual type of sexuality, because that actually is the thing that leads to multiple orgasms. That's actually the thing that can lead to 4 to 5 hour tantric rituals. Like a lot of my clients who, I've had couples come to me, and I even had this one couple that, they were Christian in their background, and they were so worried because divorce wasn't an option for them, which is beautiful. They wanted to work on their relationship. And whenever they would want to engage in intercourse, she would literally reject his penis. Like her vagina would be like, no, and it would literally reject it. And within months of doing this kind of work that I would teach them and share, and sometimes it's emotional processing too that needs to happen. And through my methodologies, they were having 4 to 5 hour tantric rituals. And she was eventually having cervical orgasms. And he was able to last well beyond anything he had in the past. And so I want to remind you that, like, we're here to live a pleasurable life. Like, sexuality is meant to be something we celebrate in our lives, not something we hide or we feel shame around. And if it's good, it's meant to be great. And if you're a woman and you're not yet having cervical orgasms, like you're meant to, if you're not yet multi-orgasmic, like that's possible for you. As a man, if you feel like shy or nervous, like, oh my God, she's going to want to do tantra, that means I have to last for hours and hours. If that feels like a fear for you, there's work there. If you feel like sometimes you have erectile dysfunction, there's work there. If you feel like you need to go to pornography for the visuals, there's something there, right? Like men have the capacity, like when a woman just looks at them, to be vital and have like a massive erection and have that last, And so it's not to shame anyone. It's to let you know like what's possible. I'm so passionate about us living our ultimate potential and our ultimate lives. And that includes our sexuality. That includes our pleasure. And I'm so passionate about this, obviously. And I'm grateful that I've decided to step out and share it more in a public way. Because like I shared yesterday, I used to just reserve this for couples who would come to me and for one-to-one clients. I wouldn't share as openly about the sacred sexuality work. I was feared that, it's shadow banning and talking about sexuality and all the distortions in it. Like that's something that's a true fear. And I don't really care now if my account has less views because they're using whatever programs to see like, oh, wait, she's talking about sexuality. Oh, hi, Lana. You signed on right at 11:11. So beautiful to see you. And yeah, and like I talked about in yesterday, it's funny because Alana and I have talked about this where, there's been a lot of distortions around sexuality in Hollywood and like with the e-files and all of that. Like there needs to be a complete reprogramming and education. And people also need to know that there's a place where you're safe to process and heal through anything that you've experienced, or even if you want a safe space to talk about what's happening in the media, like that's this space. Tomorrow I want to talk about a return to erotic innocence and like why that's so important. And I was recently on a summit and I talked about this, and more I'm seeing how we're not talking about sex enough, like in a healthy way. And I also think that there's not enough spaces to talk about even what's happening in society around sexuality. And all of that's about to change. Like justice is being served. And like I said yesterday, the quiet rebellion is us taking back our power around sexuality and having the most incredible, intimate relationship in love, in partnership, in ways that are fulfilling and nourishing to our souls, and also expand our consciousness and our energy levels and our mental health, because our mental health gets so much better as well. And so conscious sexuality is one of the paths. It's actually a path that we could do with a partner to realize full enlightenment. And I always like to remind my clients, and I say it out loud here as well, which was also considered blasphemy for a long time, which was Mary Magdalene and Jesus, Yeshua, were married tantric partners. And he performed all of his miracles, as did she by his side, but the church decided to say she was a prostitute, even though she wasn't. And they healed so many people and were able to do so much beautiful energy work because of sexuality, because of conscious sexuality and tantra practices. And moving that energy, it helps you to become a superhuman. It helps you to become realized, enlightened. It raises your frequency to the level of Christ consciousness. And so sexuality is so spiritual. And so that's why it just it baffles my mind the way it's portrayed in media, the way it's been monetized also, right? With OnlyFans and pornography and all this stuff. And it's my wish is for everyone to know what's possible through our sexuality and how healing it is. It's so healing, so healing. And like I said, I'm so passionate about this. That's why I've created my Sacred Sexuality course. It begins April 1st. Come inside of my DMs, talk to me about it if there's something that's interesting you. And then also I have the link in my bio. If you just know you're in and you just want to sign up, you can go there. And I'm going to open the group chat space on the 1st. And then within the week, we'll have our first call. And I really, whether you're single, in a relationship, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, get to know your sexuality more. Even more. And I'm so excited for the healing work we're going to do together. I'm so excited for all the practices I'm going to teach you, things that you can do with yourself, things you can do in partnership. Doesn't matter if you're single, doesn't matter if you're in a relationship. This is such beautiful work that is going to enhance every aspect of your life, including your bank account. We become healthier, we become wealthier, we become more inspired, we have more energy to do and create what we want in the world. And so with that, I send you so much love. Thank you for being here. It's so beautiful to see my friends signing on. And for those of you catching the replay, if you made it till now, definitely get inside. I love you. I'll see you for day 3 tomorrow. And if there's anything you want me to touch upon, definitely send me a message as well. And I'm happy to talk about it in the live. Big kiss to you. And I'll see you later. Bye for now.